Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba. In the most significant changes in our policy in more than 50 years, we will end an outdated approach that for decades has failed to advance our interests, and instead, we will begin to normalize relations between our two countries.
That was President Obama earlier today announcing the end to 5 decades of not dealing directly with the repressive communist regime in Cuba. It came after Cuba released American Alan Gross, as well as a spy who worked for the United States, while the U.S. releasing 3 Cuban spies. Cuba and its supporters are thrilled. See these pictures of people rejoicing in Cuba today, but questions are being asked about whether this opens the door to a dangerous precedent. Our chief White House correspondent Ed Henry reports.
Well, Martha, the bottom line is the president is struggling all around the world right now, and so he lunged at a legacy item here. This gives him a chance to be big on the world stage, reshape some 50 years of American policy, and bask in the glow. The positive side of this, the praise and thanks he got from Alan Gross for getting an American aid worker freed. The downside, of course, is that critics are now charging this shows there's a price tag on American hostages, which is why the president himself took great pains to separate Alan Gross out and claim that he wasn't part of the swap. The swap was 3 Cuban spies being released from American prisons and an American intelligence asset being released from a Cuban prison, though we all know this was hammered out in a phone call yesterday directly between the president and the dictator, Raul Castro, something I pressed Josh Earnest about.
It gives rogue regimes the idea that they can get concessions out of the President of the United States if they take someone hostage. Why should they think differently?
Because there was no concession. Mr. Gross was released on humanitarian grounds. That's what we insisted upon, and that's what the Cuban regime followed through on.
Except that claim was rejected even by a powerful Democratic Senator, Bob Menendez, a Cuban-American, who says that this basically was an exchange and that the U.S. didn't get the better end of the deal because they were giving up Cuban spies for an innocent American. Martha? All
right. Our thanks to Ed Henry tonight at the White House. My next guest is a Cuban-American congressman from Miami. Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart is a Republican and a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Congressman, welcome, sir. Very good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Martha.
What's your reaction to this deal today?
It's a sad day. What we have today is, what we've seen today is the President of the United States, who really has become, not only in this case, but in other cases, the appeaser-in-chief. Once again, giving everything, the kitchen sink and everything else, to an anti-American state sponsor of terrorism, and frankly, getting very, very little in response. Now they're saying that it wasn't a swap for Alan Gross and the 3 spies, but what happened? President Obama gave the 3 spies, and we got Alan Gross and 1 more individual. But to add insult to injury, then the president also gave further concessions. By the way, Martha, these are the things that the Castro regime has been pleading for, begging for, working for decades. They've been asking for this thing to happen, and the president has done so, and he, what in return? Again, first, because remember, there's 2 separate issues here. There's the swap for an innocent American, and then we gave up 3 spies, and supposedly we might have another person that's coming. But on top of that, there are these incredible concessions that the Castro regime has always asked for, and in return it's what? That the Red Cross is going to be able to go into Cuba, and the UN is going to be able to go into Cuba. This is the same UN that 6 months ago was told that the Castro regime has sent the largest shipment of illicit arms to North Korea, and they did nothing. They didn't respond. President Obama did respond by giving the Castro regime the largest concessions that any dictator has gotten in frankly recent history.
Yeah, I mean, it just raises so many questions about the way that this was done. Why would the administration say, oh, there's no connection between these 2 things, and do them on the same day? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. If they really wanted these things to be separate, Alan Gross and everybody in this country is so pleased for him and pleased for his family. He was an innocent man. He deserved to be freed. But why not do that today, and then a month down the road say, we're opening discussions, and we're going to be very careful about how we approach this. We're glad Alan Gross is home. Why not do it judiciously if you don't want to be accused of having it be a swap, one thing for the other?
Because I think the Castro regime insisted on making sure that they got the swap, and they got it, and they insisted on even more. They insisted on every concession that the president could come up with, and that's exactly what happened. You know, Senator Rubio said it very well when he said this is the worst negotiator in the White House that we've ever had. He said in his lifetime. I think that's probably an understatement. President Obama, once again, has done everything in his power to appease an anti-American state sponsor of terrorism, getting very little in response. Now, Martha, let me tell you, there are more concessions coming. Mark my word. You're going to see that now. President Obama is going to take Cuba off of the list of states that sponsor terrorism, not because they're not sponsors of terrorism, because even his administration recently put them back on the list, but just because it's a further concession that they can give the Castro regime. This is a president that does not understand that weakness is not in the national security interests of the United States of America. It seems to be his pattern. It seems to be the only thing he knows how to do is give concessions to the enemies of freedom, to the enemies of the United States, while at the same time, if you're an ally of the United States, if you're Israel, God forbid that you're trying to fight terrorism, because then the United States, the president will jump on you then, but not if you're an enemy.
The president said they're going to look into the issues of terrorism and try to assess if there are threats that need to be addressed there. A lot of questions, as you point out, raised by this Congressman Diaz-Balart. Thank you very much for being here tonight, sir.